I hate to break it to you, but the darkness is probably more awesome than your favorite band. Join me now in this guitar solo already in progress for proof of this statement. Hello kids, and welcome to a new installment of Weekend Wankshop here with your good pal, Uncle Ben, the only weekly lick lesson series voted #1 on the internet by jury of my family. The darkness
kicks ass.
They kick more ass than an ass-kicking factory, kicking asses on kick-ass double overtime on some kick-ass trucker meth. A few of you guys might know this band from the first big hit that they had, I Believe in a Thing Called Love. It came out a while back and they released a second album after that. Then they broke up for a while. We got back together in 2012 and released a really awesome record called Hotcakes, and they've just released their 4th full-length album, which is called The Last of Our Kind. The album is full of really great riffs, killer vocals, and lots of guitar solos that the band described themselves as being highly irresponsible. The band also now features Rufus Taylor on drums. That's the son of Queen drummer Roger Taylor, which makes the band even cooler. This week's lick is a fairly expensive one from the song Open Fire, which is one of the singles that they released off of The Last of Our Kind. It's got a D minor pentatonic feel with some cool tapping and some legato stuff in there. It's pretty dope. Before we dig into it, let's check it out again at stepdad speed. And as always, kids, you can find a full tab for this lick as well as other cool shit on my Instagram page. Find me over there, Ben Eller Guitars. Find the tab for the lick, learn how to play it, and upload a video of yourself playing it along with the hashtag #WeekendWankshop. That way I can scope it out and swell with pride. Okay, so this lick is based on the good old D minor blues scale, which is the notes D, F, G, A flat, A, C, D. And he's playing it here in the classic kind of box position, which if you don't know, goes like this. On the E string, you got 10 and 13. On the A string here, you got 10, 11, 12. On the D string here, you've got 10 and 12. G string, that's 10, 12, 13. B string, that's 10 and 13. And high E string, 10 and 13. Okay, we'll break this into 2 sections here, the kind of fast lick and then the tapping lick that follows that, the very Eddie Van Halen sounding part. The fast lick is going to be like this. Keep in mind too, everything is right there inside of that D blues scale we talked about. So if you're familiar with that scale pattern, you're not going to be playing anything outside of that that's too strange. You're going to begin with the 13th fret on the B string and a quick whole step bend. Like that. So what I'm doing here is I grab the 13th B with my ring finger, using my other guys piled on back here to help push it up a step. So I'm going to do a whole step bend and release it, and then do a pull off to the 10th fret on the B string back here. Then you're going to play the 13 on the G, and then go back to that 10th fret B note you were hitting a second ago. And then what we're going to do after that is to play down the notes on the G string, the 13, 12, and 10. Just like this. Notice I only picked the very first note, the 13. I then pulled off to 12 and pulled off to 10 after that. That's the start of the lick. You'll notice I'm not using my little finger to play these licks. That's one of those kind of strange things that you'll see in a lot of kind of blues and blues rock kind of playing like this. A lot of times you just don't really need the little finger. You're going to be doing so much bending and stuff anyway, and nobody really bends with the little finger that a lot of times with licks like this, dudes will just leave the little finger out entirely. I just want to set a good example and tell you guys, do play with the little finger, but licks like this, you really don't have to. So after you play that first lick, you're going to play this. This is, again, all staying on the G string using the same 3 notes that we had before. I'm going to pick the 12th fret, hammer onto 13, pull off to 12, pull off to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4 notes. Do that lick 2 times. So now we have this. Again, notice how little of that is actually picked. The hammer-ons and pull-offs are really carrying this lick. So if you tried to play this entire thing all picked, it'd be quite a lot harder. So use those hammer-ons and pull-offs to your advantage. So now we enter into the tap section of the lick, which is probably the most difficult part of it, actually. The fast part's not too bad, but keeping all these bends and taps and stuff sounding clean is actually a little bit tricky. So here's the deal. You know, you could go about this with a couple of different strategies for your right hand. A lot of guys prefer to do the tapping with the middle finger. That's what I'm doing. That way I can still hold the pick between these two guys, because you're going to be picking notes at the end of the lick too. You could use your middle finger, you could use your ring finger. Some guys even like to do this classic move right here where you just kind of slide the pick over to your middle finger and tap with the index like that. If that works for you, go for it. I just use my middle finger personally. Your mileage may vary. Start off by playing the 13th fret on the B string with a whole step bend. And then what you're going to do is with one of your free fingers over here, tap on 16 on that same string. So in other words, we did the bend, and then I tapped it up here at 16. Now normally fret number 16 is an E flat note, which is out of key for this scale right here, but you got to think, you're bending it up a whole step, so it's not E flat anymore, it's the note a step above it, which is F, which is in the scale. It's an important thing to remember anytime you're doing licks with bending and tapping is, you know, what was a D note is no longer a D note anymore if you're bending it. Now it's an E note, you know? So always have that kind of stuff in mind. So anyway, what we're going to do here is we're going to play 13 on the B, bend it up a whole step, tap on 16. Be sure not to let this bend fall, by the way. If it starts to droop at all, this sounds terrible. Although you can get those cool ambulance driving by sounds. So after you do the tap on 16, what you're going to do is to do a pull-off back to the 13th fret that you're still bending, like this. So I'm doing the bend, I tap it, I pull off to the bend that I'm still holding, and then let it down. And then I pull off to fret number 10. So you've got 13 with the bend, tapping on 16, pulling back off to your bend, releasing, pull off to 10. Keeping those moves sounding clean is really, really, really tough, especially at slow speeds, actually. It's a little bit easier if you're tearing ass through it to do it cleanly. So be sure to kind of watch that stuff. Be sure to apply some muting back here on the unused strings with your back of your hand and even your forearm on those unused strings. So after that, I'm going to play the 12 on the G, and it's totally okay to pick on the neck. You don't have to jump all the way back here to pick the note. You can kind of pick this 12th fret G on the neck. A whole step bend. I'm going to tap on 15. Pull off, let it back down, pull off to 10. It's the same motif, just executed on the next part of the scale here. So I got 12th G, whole step bend, tap on 15, pull back off to my bend, let the bend down, pull off to 10. After that, we're going to play the 12 on the D string. And then what you're going to do after that is to play a double stop right here. So I'm playing the 10 on the G and the 10 on the B. So that's kind of a classic blues rock lick. And then he shuts this whole thing down here by jumping down here to the 10th fret on the A string. Notice I'm using my ring finger because I'm going to bend it. Give it about a half step bend. Pull off to A. And then lastly, end on the root note here, this D note on fret number 10 of your low E string. So once again, we start off with the fast lick. Our bendy part here. And then that last bluesy lick. There you go. That'll get you chicks in no time. I want to point out one more thing about tapping on bent notes like this, because there's a little thing to take into consideration that might make or break your success when doing these kinds of licks. It's about the direction in which you choose to pull off, basically the direction in which you flick your finger to sound out that next note. Here's what I mean. With the left hand, it's pretty easy to understand. If I'm fretting a note, I can do a pull off by flicking my finger towards the floor, like that, or I can flick it towards the ceiling and get a pull off sound that way too. It's kind of like downstroke versus upstroke, only in the left hand. Whenever I'm tapping, you can do the same thing too. You can tap a note and pull off up towards the ceiling, like Eddie Van Halen does. That kind of sound. Or you can push down to the floor. Now, I don't do this personally. I'm not very good at it, but there's a lot of guys that do it really well. Joe Satriani comes to mind, anytime he does tapping stuff, he pulls off towards the floor like that. Again, not my area of expertise, but there you go. But in a lick like this, it's really beneficial actually to do your tapped pull off. Where was it? There it is. By pulling down to the floor like that. I found while I was doing this lick that, you know, a lot of times whenever I do that bend, that G string, the one right above the B, is going to end up trapped underneath that finger and basically fretted. I can pick the G and hear that I'm, you know, fretting it over here. Now the thing is whenever I do that pull off upwards towards the ceiling like Eddie Van Halen, I'm really likely to strike the B string and the G string, which again is being accidentally fretted over here, and that sounds like horse shit. So what you want to do anytime you're tapping these bent notes like this is to push down onto the floor actually. Because look, you're creating all of this landscape right here. I've got all this vacancy where I'm not going to accidentally hit the wrong string, even if that area, or even if that technique isn't my particular favorite. It's still totally doable, because it's not like I'm going to strike this other string like that, which sounds wretched. So keep that in mind. While you're doing those tap licks, try pushing down and see if that helps you get a cleaner sound out of it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to The Darkness for putting out another awesome record. Be sure to go buy The Last of Our Kind at your favorite music outlet or online supplier. And when I say buy, I mean buy with money, because The Darkness deserves your money, because they're awesome. So don't go steal their product from the internet. Stay tuned next week for more awesome stuff, and be sure to drop me an email, benellerguitars@gmail.com, about booking some one-on-one Skype lessons between you and me so we can learn you good. Thank you guys again, and stay tuned. I'll see you guys next time.